A 3-hour movie. $250 million. Real oceans, real sand, and a director who still refuses to fake a single wave. That's the setup for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And just days before it hits theaters, something new landed that most blockbusters never bother giving audiences. An honest look at how the sausage gets made. Today we're breaking down the making of documentary that just dropped, why Nolan's obsession with practical effects might be the smartest financial bet in Hollywood right now, and why this film has already sparked more online arguments than most movies manage in their entire release cycle. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why this project is either going to be remembered as a masterpiece or as the most expensive game of chicken a studio has played in years. So here's what actually happened. Peacock quietly announced a special called The Odyssey, the making of an epic, and it's streaming right now, ahead of the film's theatrical debut. This isn't just a marketing trailer stretched to an hour. Early footage shows Nolan and Matt Damon sitting down to talk through the production, along with behind-the-scenes material from a shoot that, by most accounts, was closer to a military campaign than a film set. Why does this matter? Because Nolan almost never does this. He's famously private about his process. He doesn't do extended DVD commentaries. He doesn't flood social media with content. So when his camp decides to release a full documentary right before a movie opens, that's a signal. Universal knows the how it was made story is just as marketable as the movie itself. And with The Odyssey, that story is genuinely wild. Now let's talk about what Nolan actually did here, because this is where the nerdy stuff gets fun. Nolan shot this film on location around the world, using real sets, real extras, and forced perspective tricks instead of leaning on computer-generated creatures. Think about that for a second. This is a story that includes cyclopes, sirens, and a nymph who traps a man on an island for years. Almost any other director hands that straight to a visual effects house and calls a day. Not Nolan. Reports and early trailers suggest he used old-school in-camera techniques, oversized props, and clever camera placement to make certain characters appear massive on screen, all without excessive digital paint. It's the same philosophy he applied to flipping a truck in The Dark Knight, or building a functional rotating hallway set for Inception. Here's the part that should blow your mind if you're into filmmaking. This isn't just an artistic choice. It's a financial one, too. Every practical effect Nolan pulls off becomes free advertising. Audiences want to see how a director built a Cyclops without a green screen. That curiosity sells tickets on its own, which is exactly why a behind-the-scenes special makes so much sense right now. Now let's get into the numbers, because this is where things get genuinely tense for Universal. The reported budget on this film sits around $250 million. That's an enormous number for any movie, but it's especially staggering for something with an R rating and a nearly 3-hour runtime. Historically, that combination scares studios because a longer runtime means fewer showtimes per day, and an R rating traditionally narrows the audience. At that budget, industry estimates put the break-even point somewhere around $600 million once marketing and distribution costs get factored in. So how likely is that? Let's look at the track record. Oppenheimer, Nolan's last film, was also a long, serious, R-rated drama, and conventional wisdom said that combination would cap its box office potential. Instead, it pulled in just under $976 million worldwide. It also became a genuine cultural moment, thanks to the whole Barbenheimer phenomenon back in 2023. Now, fresh projections are rolling in for The Odyssey's opening weekend, and they keep climbing. Early tracking data had the domestic opening somewhere between $80 and $100 million. Just days later, other analysts pushed that number up to a range of $100 to $120 million. And the most recent projections suggest it could land anywhere from $98 to as high as $132 million domestically in its opening weekend alone. For context, that would put The Odyssey's opening ahead of Oppenheimer's $82 million debut. If Nolan's films follow their usual pattern, where opening weekends tend to multiply 3 to 5 times by the time their theatrical run ends, this movie has a real shot at clearing that $600 million break-even mark, and possibly by a wide margin. There's also an international angle worth mentioning. Analysts tracking the international rollout expect strong turnout in the UK, France, and Italy, along with meaningful ticket sales in India, a market that already delivered $19 million for Oppenheimer. And here's a detail that might matter more than people realize. This film is being pitched almost entirely as an event to see in 70mm IMAX. Some of those premium screenings reportedly sold out more than a year in advance. That kind of anticipation doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen for movies people plan on skipping. That let's talk about who's actually carrying this thing, because the ensemble here is stacked in a way that feels almost unfair. Matt Damon leads as Odysseus, the Greek king trying to make his way home after years of war. And Hathaway plays his wife Penelope, holding down the kingdom while everyone assumes her husband is dead. Tom Holland plays their son, Telemachus, stepping into a role that's a significant departure from the type of characters he's known for. Beyond that trio, you've got Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron, Lupita Nyong'o, Elliot Page, John Bernthal, Mia Goth, and John Leguizamo rounding out the cast. That's not a supporting lineup. That's basically an all-star roster. Here's a fun wrinkle for anyone paying attention to celebrity schedules. Zendaya and Tom Holland, who are a real-life couple, both appear in this film, but reportedly don't share any scenes together. And in an odd twist of timing, the two of them will be back on screen together at the end of the month in a completely different franchise. It's a strange coincidence that two of their films are landing within roughly 2 weeks of each other. Now, no discussion of this movie is complete without addressing the online noise, because there's been a lot of it. One major point of debate has centered on casting choices and questions about representation, given the story's Greek origins. Some critics and outlets have raised pointed questions about the ethnic makeup of the cast relative to the source material setting. Cast members have responded to this criticism directly, with at least one actor stating publicly that she wasn't interested in spending her time crafting a defense. Separately, there's been chatter online about accents used in the film, with some viewers pushing back on choices made for characters meant to represent ancient Greek figures. And on top of that, the film became an unlikely target in a broader online campaign involving misinformation, with a high-profile tech figure reportedly spending days publicly criticizing the project. We're not here to settle any of that for you. These are genuinely contested points, and reasonable people land in different places on them. What we can say is that none of this online friction appears to have slowed ticket sales. If anything, controversy tends to generate the kind of conversation that keeps a title trending for better or worse. Zoom out for a second, because there's something bigger happening here than just one movie. Nolan holds a box office record that almost nobody talks about enough. He's the only director in history with 5 consecutive films that each grossed at least $500 million worldwide, a streak that ran from The Dark Knight through Dunkirk. That's not luck. That's a filmmaker who has built an audience willing to show up regardless of subject matter, runtime, or rating. And this release is landing at an interesting moment for the industry as a whole. Analysts tracking the summer box office suggest that between this film and a certain wall-crawling superhero sequel arriving 2 weeks later, the industry could be looking at one of its strongest summers in years, potentially challenging totals not seen since before the pandemic reshaped movie-going habits. So really, this isn't just a bet on one filmmaker. Universal is essentially betting that audiences still want the theatrical experience badly enough to show up for a 3-hour R-rated epic on the strength of a name alone. Here's where I land on all this. The Odyssey represents something increasingly rare in modern Hollywood. A massive budget handed to a filmmaker who insists on doing things the hard way, on purpose, because he believes audiences can tell the difference. Whether that bet pays off gets decided at the box office starting this week. But regardless of the final numbers, the fact that a studio greenlit a $250 million practical effects epic based on a 3,000-year-old poem tells you everything about how much trust Nolan has built with Hollywood. If you want to see exactly how they pulled off those creature sequences without leaning on CGI, that making of documentary is streaming right now. And it's worth your time even if you've already got your theater tickets booked. Let me know down in the comments what you think the opening weekend number actually ends up being. I'll be tracking it, and I might just come back with a follow-up once the real numbers land. Thanks for watching. and I'll see you in the next one.